This is Leah Klett with the Christian Post, and I'm so honored to be here today with award-winning Christian music artist Matthew West. We're talking about his latest book, The God Who Stays. I love that you're just a jack of all trades. You do everything. I mean, you put out chart-topping hits, you write books, you have a podcast, but why did you write this particular book at this particular time?
Well, I had a lot of times like my songs, I'll write a song and then I'll feel like, man, there's really more that I want to say about the theme of that song. And so that's what led me to start writing books, was because I felt like I wanted to unpack more. You know, songwriting is a beautiful thing, like, and you have to learn the craft of telling your story in 3 minutes and making it rhyme and hopefully have a catchy melody that people will remember. So there's a lot of confines inside that 3 minute song. And so I've really enjoyed unpacking that and getting the chance to take that little 3 minute song and that message that it holds and get to unpack it on a deeper level. It's kind of like what I grew up watching my dad do. He never wrote books, but he would write sermons for his church. And so getting to kind of share a more elaborate version of a little succinct 3 minute song is something I'm excited about. This book came about in the heat of 2020. I was on tour with Casting Crowns, and we had just put out a song called Nobody. So we decided to go on tour together. And we were together in an arena in New Jersey when they informed us that the whole world was shutting down and that our concerts were canceled. We had to go home that night, and it's like that was kind of, when you think about, like, if somebody asks you, where were you when the world shut down, right? That's where I was. And so the genesis of this book, chapter 1 of this book, actually takes place in the backseat of an Uber in Trenton, New Jersey, on the way to the Philadelphia airport, when I'm sitting in the back seat. The whole world's coming crashing down. I'm just consumed by fear and panic like everybody else probably was. And a song came on the Uber driver's radio in the middle of that drive to the airport, and it was my song. It was The God Who Stays. And that wasn't all. The Uber driver was actually singing every word of the song. He knew the song, but he had no idea that I was sitting in the back seat. And so the interaction that took place with that Uber driver actually wound up being the beginning and the inspiration for me to write this book, hopefully as a reminder to myself and to others that no matter what kind of difficult things we're facing, we never are facing it alone. He is always with us. As the book says, he is the God who stays.
Yeah. What type of response have you gotten from people who hear this song? You know, they're singing it in the middle of a pandemic. This reminder that God is always with us. What has the response been like?
Well, it's powerful because you start to think, like, you know how there's the old cliche, like the devil's in the details. Like, man, I think it's the other way around. You know, I see God involved in the most finite, intricate details of our lives. And like, for me to be in the back seat of that Uber and that song to come on, and the Uber driver's singing that song, and then I start talking to him, and he starts telling me why that song means a lot to him, and just I felt like God literally was thinking of me in that moment. Like he was. There's another song of mine out right now called "Me on Your Mind." It literally felt like God had me on His mind, and so I've heard that familiar refrain from people when they heard that song, "The God Who Stays," for the first time. And I hope when they read this book that the same thing, the same message will ring true. And so I think a lot of people have just shared with me, man, I needed the message of that song when I was separated from my family during COVID. I needed the message of that song when I was unable to go visit my loved one in the senior citizens home because of, fear of sickness. I needed this message. Here we were in the middle of a time dominated by distance, social distancing, life 6 feet apart. You can't see people's facial expressions. And isn't it just like God to have a little 3 minute song go out into the world that reminds you, hey, in the midst of this physical distance, like, you can experience a spiritual closeness to your Creator at all times, no matter what circumstances are around you. So I think that was probably the neatest thing, just seeing, like, forget the devil, God is in the details, and people have been sharing with me how they felt that when they heard this song.
You know, we're hopefully on the other side of this pandemic, but So many people are still struggling. There's with the trauma of what happened, there's so much mental illness that we're seeing. People are still scared to go to church. What encouragement do you want to give somebody who might be still struggling with their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, any any tragedy or I mean, you think about like I remember visiting Haiti after the earthquake, but it was long after the earthquake, and the city of Port-au-Prince was still in shambles. Like, you don't recover overnight from, you know, cataclysmic, like ground shaking experience in our lives, right? Like, that's not an overnight thing. And I had a counselor say to me once when he was kind of assessing my tendency to, he called it, I think he said it was the flight to health.
Mm,
And he was saying, like, because I had an injury and I was going through this physical therapy to recover from surgery on my vocal cords. And there was something like I had one last appointment with my physical therapist and I didn't show up. I don't know why. I just didn't show up. And I was sitting with my counselor and he's like, "Well, why didn't you go to your last?" I mean, like that was they wanted to celebrate that my voice was recovered, but in my mind, I was so focused on getting better, and like he described it as like this tendency to like your mind tells yourself you're better, you're okay, go. You rush, even though you might still have a broken wing, you're like in your mind you're ready to fly off and say that you're better now, and he was just kind of sharing with me sometimes that's like the worst thing you can do because if you never fully deal with things, you never fully heal
yeah.
from those things too. And so I guess all that to say is that's not an answer for the how. I will say that there is power in Psalm 46:10 that tells us to be still. Don't rush to fly to health. Don't rush to say that you're okay. Not to keep quoting my songs, but that was another song of mine that really resonated with people during the pandemic about letting the truth be told. Like if you're struggling, don't let the enemy get you convinced that you're the only one who's struggling because the enemy wants isolation. And I believe he loved this last 2 years of people feeling isolated. And what happens when we're alone? What happens when we're isolated and away from community? We lack accountability, we lack support, right? Our thoughts can get the best of us, and we can go to dark places and make mistakes. And that's why you see addiction levels on the rise, so many people struggling. We need each other, we need community. And first and foremost, we need a relationship with Christ. And so I guess my encouragement to anybody who's still dealing with the aftermath is look, God doesn't move on even when the rest of the world does. He stays with you and he walks with you no matter how long it takes. There's a story I tell of somebody who lost a loved one. And in the beginning, people were very supportive of that person, right? Rallying around them and then, showing up with meals. And this particular woman, she was just having a hard time. She lost her son and she wasn't moving on quite as fast as her support group around her
Mm,
maybe wanted her to until one person finally said, "Hey, it's time to move on," like flippantly saying that to the mother who's grieving
mm,
her son. And I think about that. Like our world is in the business of moving on, right? We're already on to the next crisis. If you turn on the news today, it'll be a different crisis than they were highlighting yesterday. The world moves on. But when we're still stuck in our grief, or we're still stuck in our anxiety, we're still wrestling with our depression, we're still battling our demons and our addictions, there's one who promises that he's not going to leave us, even if the world says, too much for me, I'm moving on. He stays, he stays, he stays.
yeah, that's really good.
Now,
What
now
was
you got
it?
me fired up talking about this, though.
I can't believe they told her to move on. That's awful.
Well, I think that is it's a great illustration of the human capacity. Like, we want to be like Christ, but we are human. And
Yeah.
we, like, the reality is like, even like, we will all have our limits with people, won't we? And that in itself makes me thankful that He is God and I'm not. Our
Mhm.
world is consumed with making ourselves like gods, but we will reach the end of our ability to have compassion for people. We have a limit. It's not limitless because we're not God. And that just makes me like when I hear stuff like that, or when I, God forbid, act like that, right? When I'm dealing with somebody in my life and I'm going, I've given them too many chances. It
Mhm.
hits me. Oh, I have my limits, but his grace has none. And I'm just so thankful for that, you know?
Yeah. Matthew, what was it like for you emotionally writing this book? Because it's so interesting to me to hear about how your own words, God is sort of like, hey, remember what you said, though. Remember those words you wrote.
Yeah, I talk about it like this, like writing a song. There's a lot of community in songwriting, and even if I write a song by myself, I'm bouncing it off of my producer, and there's this back and forth, and it feels like there's energy in that. And then we sit down to write a book. A lot of times, it can be just incredibly isolating, and so this time, what I did is I called a friend of mine who is a brilliant writer, and I said, I want you to kind of be my my ping pong partner. Like I want to try writing a book the way I write a song, and I want to just throw stuff out. And I want you to hit it back to me. And so that really kind of awakened the book writing process for me. It was less about me thinking I should be admitted into an insane asylum. Alone with my thoughts for several months because that's really tough.
Yeah.
But I will say too, like this, a big part of this book was me. It mirrors what happened in my personal life over the last 2 years, and there was something about the pandemic that caused me to be still, and it really made me revisit some of the foundations of my faith. Like, what is it I believe and why? Instead of trying to be a clever songwriter, saying the perfect thing, and being an eloquent speaker who, can communicate, and because I'm so eloquent, people will come to know Jesus, I felt like I had gotten better at talking about Jesus than actually talking to him. And
Mhm.
so this book was a lot about me just like sitting down and talking to Jesus. It's crazy. We're listening and we're seeing like the word deconstruction everywhere when it comes to like um, Christian circles and Christian influencers denouncing their belief in God. And I got to be honest, like I went through this process the last couple years, even in writing this book, of just like going back to the basics of what do I believe and why. And I went there and I came back to tell you it all checks out still for me. It didn't deconstruct my faith. It rebuilt my faith. On
Mm.
Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. And so this book is a real victory story of somebody who was willing to admit, hey, I think I'm spending a little more time projecting my faith in a public platform than I am actually growing personally. And I want that to change, and I want to dig into what it is I believe. And I don't want it just to be what I was taught as a kid. I want to literally like spend time with Jesus and allow him to show me who he is and who he says I am. And I came through that just going, man, I am a follower of Christ, and I love him with all my heart, and I want to live my life telling others about him. But I know that I have to take care of first things first, and that is to talk with Jesus and to walk with Jesus in my personal life, and to be thankful that he stays with me through it all. There's a theme throughout the book of God looking for Adam and Eve in the garden to go for a walk with them in the cool of the day. That's what
Mm.
it says in Genesis. Of course, we know Adam and Eve, when they became aware, when they ate from the one tree they were told not to, when God came looking for his friends, Adam and Eve, for a walk, they hid. But I
Mhm.
imagine before that, like the thought that there was a God who wanted to just take a walk with his creation. Like, come on, let's go. The cool of the day. I just love that image. And I love that thought of like, that's how much he loves me. Like, he likes me. Like, he wants to go for a walk with me. How cool is that? So those are some of the thoughts that I think about from the experience of writing this book.
And I know we're almost out of time, but I could pick your brain all day. I'm so interested in this correlation between the Christian music world and deconstruction because we've just seen so much of it lately. And it's just so fascinating to me.
If I'm speaking exclusively about the Christian music part of it, I think a lot of times maybe a young artist comes in and they want to give their gifts to God and they want to be part of Christian music, but then they get bogged down by the business part of it too, or maybe get taken advantage of, or feel like, and then you're kind of surprised to go, wait, I thought this was like the Christian industry, but somebody's taking advantage of me, or this contract's blah blah blah, and you can start to, just like somebody might get bruised by the church or burned by somebody in the church, or church leadership failed them in their opinion, and then they're like, well, I can't go to church anymore, this happened to me, you know what I mean? I think sometimes that can be like, for the Christian music industry, there's been times in my career where I've been dragged into this world where I'm more focused on the business part of it than the ministry part of it. And and now it's crazy because like I'm a CEO of a company. I don't think of myself that way. Like I'm a storyteller. That's what I really am. But when you're pulled into that CEO role and you have a ton of employees and team members, and you have to look at financial bottom lines and revenue and stuff like that, that can kind of drag you away from like the beauty of like what God put you on this earth to do. So I think it's really like, and I think that's where a lot of churches struggle, you know what I mean? How to do that. And I think maybe some artists can get burned out on that part of it too. And then, if they've been taken advantage of financially or something by a company or whatever, then they start to go, what was it all for? But again, I just got to keep coming back to that belief that like, my God says that I'll find him if I seek him. He says that he will hear me if I call his name. He tells me that the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. My prayers aren't bouncing off the ceiling. I know that. And ultimately, my faith is secure, and I just know that I know.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, just one more question. What ultimately is your hope for your new book?
You mean this book?
That book right there.
um, Gosh, I mean, I'll say this. I needed this book. And my ultimate hope is that what oftentimes happens with my music will also happen with this book. A lot of times I'll get to the end of a song and I'll go, that song was for me, wasn't it, Lord? And I feel like the Lord says, yeah, you need this message. I'm having you write it for you. But then those are the very songs that wind up having people say, ooh, he just read my mail. That's my story. I needed that. And my hope is that somebody picks up this book, and through the stories I tell, through my own spiritual journey of coming back to the basics of my faith, that their faith will be renewed. For somebody who doesn't know Jesus and hasn't discovered a personal relationship with him, that they will feel the need and the urgency to make that decision to follow Christ. And for somebody who has a relationship with Christ but maybe feels like they've fallen into my category of, you gotten good at being a Christian, and yet there's deeper levels that he's calling you to, that maybe you're calling on the name of Jesus, not for the first time, but for the first time in a long time. One of the things I talk about throughout the book is the blue couch. And on the back cover of the book, there's a picture of me sitting on a blue couch. And what that signifies is, as a 13-year-old kid, I asked Jesus into my heart, sitting on a blue couch, watching a Billy Graham crusade. I call that my blue couch moment. And some days, throughout the book, I talk about how I feel like I've just inched further and further away from that kid on a blue couch. And then the enemy wants me to believe I'll never get back to that feeling. But the whole message of this book that I hope resonates with people is that wherever your blue couch moment was, God didn't stay there when you got up and walked away. He has followed you. He leaves the 99 to find the one. The message of the gospel is a message of his pursuit of us. And this book is just a chapter by chapter reminder of all the ways that God stays faithful, good, loving, forgiving, patient, kind. He stays with us. He never leaves us. He never forsakes us. And I needed that reminder, and I hope somebody else out there does too.